Alright guys, Foreman's getting ready for the Off-Road Products Expo, and in order to get it running again and shifting, I converted it to a foot shift today, which is a tricky thing. A lot of people tried it and messed it up. I figured it out. I didn't do it exactly the right way, but I made it work. So a few pointers if you're going to attempt this. Number one, you definitely need to replace the back cover. You can try to drill a hole and install the hardware for the shift shaft, the thing the shifter hooks to, but it's a real pain in the butt. So put a foot shift rear cover on it. You're probably better off swapping your stator and your shift position sensor from your old cover into your new one. The reason I say that is because there are different connectors from different year Hondas. So this is a 520 rear cover, and the connectors were different for the shift position sensor and for the output for your ignition system. So I had to do some soldering and some rigging, which I'll show you later. I also went ahead and used a foot shift front cover. That's the easiest way to do it. You could modify the electric shift cover, put a plug in it and make it work, but a foot shift front cover made it super easy. The other things you got to do is replace the shaft, the shift shaft that runs all the way through the motor. You got to take the ES one out the front and install the foot shift one from the back, which is kind of funny. And you've also got to, you should install the clutch adjuster hardware and the clutch cam mechanisms from a foot shift. There are different part numbers than ES. It'll shift either way, but it'll shift better if you use the foot shift stuff. I'll show you guys all of that on the computer because, as usual, I'm thorough and I give you guys part numbers because that's what you pay for here. But yeah, it's on the 32XXs. It looks mean, ready to hit a dig. I can neutral drop it now. It's also got some prototype stall springs I'm working on that are a little bit more of a stall than the economy EPI stall that's been around, but not as bad as a competition stall. So it's still rideable, but it gets up and goes. You guys are gonna like this. This is Dylan's motor that blew up that he kind of gave me for doing some work for him. So this is the top end. There's the jug. That looks pretty normal. Here is the piston and the connecting rod. Connecting rod sheared off, but as you can see, it's sliding on the wrist pin. The piston didn't lock up. He put the clips in, so what caused it? What caused it was a weakening in the rod from the previous engine that failed, and just randomly failed driving down the trail. When it failed, absolute chaos ensued. The connecting rod broke the balancer shaft, which threw metal into here and broke the case in several places, and I find most interesting, broke first gear. It's pretty crazy. Also, shift drum is broken in half. Never seen that before. So yeah, none of these transmission parts are usable, unfortunately, but pretty cool to take apart, and it's fun to take something apart that you don't put back together. So yeah, it's all knackered. This is your reverse gear. But yeah, this is what these motors look like on the inside. I'm not sure if I've ever made a video splitting the case. I don't do them all that often. But the reason I'm taking this apart is because I want to get everything spinning, because I'm going to use this motor to do some cool stuff like test fit gear reductions. All right, today's project will be very fun or very miserable. We are finally going to convert the Foreman 500 electric shift to a foot shift. And I've got a lot of covers and shafts and extra parts laying around from other vehicles. So while we're at it, we're going to throw on a fresh top end. Alrighty guys, the engine is about to come out of the beater Foreman. So a few pointers to do this. Undo all your connectors, pull the front drive shaft out of the way, remove your electric shift motor, take the wires that come out of the motor, zip tie them to the coolant thermostat housings, throw out of the way, and then pick up your motor and slide it forward. That'll help you get it off the drive shaft. It helps if your drive shaft's nice and lubricated like mine. And if you do all this, you don't have to separate the swing arm or jack up the vehicle, take the tires off. You can pull the front diff forward a little bit, pull out the front drive shaft, and then just pull the engine out like that. Now when you go to put the engine back in, it is nice to have one person to hold the U-joint to stab it while you put the motor in, but it's all doable. Vessel floorboards give you a lot of space to work on this stuff, so I didn't have to pull the floorboards at all, other than this one little cover right here. Now to get the engine out this way, I'm going to go ahead and pull this piece of the floorboard just so I don't scratch it up. But yeah, a lot of nice access. This thing needed some love, and if you're going to try to do a foot shift conversion on an ES motor, you got to pull the back cover. It's a pain in the ass to do it in the frame. This bar is kind of in the way. It can be done, but I generally just pull the motor. So while it's out, of course, we're going to do a top end and freshen her up. Alrighty, here's why you pull the motor out of the bike. So the main thing you're trying to swap out is the shift shaft. This is a foot shift shaft. It has the part for the foot shifter. This is an ES shift shaft. It is operated by these splines because it's electric shift. So this shaft slides out this way from electric shift, and it comes in from the back for the foot shift. So if it's on the bench, you can pull up both cases, slide the shaft out the front, slide your new shaft in from the back, you're good to go. Also, you need this piece right here off of the foot shift, right? Because it's part of the shaft in electric shift. And it's also smart to swap out these pieces. These are different part numbers for electric shift versus foot shift. And so is this little piece down here, your clutch adjuster piece. These little balls are the same, but the piece down there is different. So I'm taking all of that stuff out of the foot shift motor that we tore down last night, putting it into my electric shift motor, and hopefully I'll have a foot shift soon. Also gonna do some springs in here to make it a little more aggressive. Tarachi 60% gear reduction is doing great. No wear looking at all. Timing chain looks fine, leave that alone. So yeah, don't have to mess with timing. I was thinking about putting the 520 cam in here, and I ran all the part numbers, and it's just not worth it. It should work, but it's such a marginal gain in power, I'm not gonna mess with it. All right, so the back cover is on. I can't do a walkthrough because I'm wearing gloves and phone and by myself, so deal with it. If you want details for the back cover, check out my secondary gear reduction video. By the way, I don't recommend those anymore. They're a pain in the ass to install, they require grinding, and there's been a lot of failures, so yeah, just don't do it. But anyway, to put the back cover on, you gotta line up the shifter pin with the shift shaft. It goes up and down, line that up. You also gotta line up the shift drum sensor. The long part goes towards neutral. Again, watch my other video for all that. Put ultra gray all the way around these grommets. Yes, I didn't clean it very good. This is my motor, so I get to build it as fast as I want, and I'm in a hurry. It'll be fine. Now I'm doing the front cover. So I actually have a front cover off of that 520 that blew up. That's a foot shift. So I'm gonna throw it on there. You don't have to do that. You could use your ES cover and then just find a way to plug up the pass-through for your shift shaft. But I need this cover for another project, another ES motor. So I'm gonna go ahead and use this foot shift cover. It already has the correct cam piece on it. And all I gotta do is use this bearing and this cam. So RO and RO, right? And then it'll be a foot shift motor. I've swapped over literally everything. So this will go on there, that'll go on there, good to go. So the things you absolutely have to swap is the shift shaft, this clutch arm, this piece right here that I'm holding, the bearing, and this piece down here that I'm touching. That's what you really gotta swap to do the ES swap. It is kind of involved. If you're not super familiar with these motors, probably don't attempt it. You'll dork it up. But I'm making this video mostly just for Patreon because you guys seem to like this stuff. Probably won't even put it on YouTube because it'll create more questions than I feel like answering. All right, I'm about 4 hours into this job. Engine's back in, it's running, but I did make a mistake. So the connector for the shift position sensor is different on a 2017 500 than it is on a 2022 520. So what I did was, went to the wire harness, found the green wire with the red stripe, and I grounded that. Once you ground that wire, it thinks it's always in neutral. Mine's flashing because it's an ES computer that's missing a bunch of sensors, so it's confused, but it'll run just fine like this because it thinks it's in neutral. Okay, so that's cool. The other mistake I made was the pickup for the ignition system. Also a different connector on the 520, so I had to splice the connector off the old cover onto here, solder, heat shrink. Now we're good to go, we got ignition. So when I first started it up, I had no ignition. So those are two things I could have avoided by swapping the stator and the shift position sensor into this new 500 cover. I didn't feel like doing that, and so I did it the hardest way possible, but I didn't want to pull the engine back out, so I made it work. I don't need to see what gear I'm in because I know what gear I'm in, and this also removes some complexity because shift position sensor now just looks like that. I just cut the wires up at the case. So yeah, a little simpler. Shift angle sensor no longer plugs in because there is no shift angle sensor. So yeah, it's a foot shift motor now. Very premium. All right, the beast is running again. Took the better part of the day. This middle part right here is my original 2017 motor. These covers are off of a 2022 520. The front cover went on just fine, along with all the manual shift internals, the shift shaft, everything like that. The rear cover had some different connectors on it, so I had to do the old start and gear mod by grounding the red wire with green wire with a red stripe, grounded there. So now it thinks it's always in neutral because that connector didn't plug in. Over here I had to do some soldering because the stator power coil wire didn't plug in, different connectors. But yeah, other than that, went pretty smooth. Put a new top end on it as well, so that's all freshened up. It's on the 32XXs now, looks super mean. 35s are on the Can-Am. That's gonna break the internet. Pretty huge. And of course the Can-Am is torn down again because the ECU went back out to ATV flashing to get the second tune on it because the first tune didn't latch properly. Front rubs just slightly when you turn, but yeah, pretty funny. The rear rubs a lot. All right guys, real quick, here's the parts you need to do the swap. You have an electric shift, which is an FE. I'm gonna show you the foot shift parts you need to swap in to make this work. So here's your back cover. I recommend buying a whole back cover, find a used motor, a blown up motor, that's what I did, or find this cover on eBay. I also actually bought one of those and then it got held up in Canada because they were rioting or something because Canada's crazy. So I have an extra cover if anyone needs it off a foot shift. But anyway, you need this whole cover because you need the hole right here. This is where your shifter hooks up right here. It goes onto the shaft. If you have an ES, you don't have that hole on these new body style ones. Depending what cover you get from a foot shift, you're probably going to lose your shift angle sensor, but the good news is you don't need that anymore because you're a foot shift, and that only is for the ES. As far as these covers go, if you have a 500, try to get a 500 because then you can use the same speed sensor. If you end up with a 420, the speed sensor has to get modified because there's different size gears, so don't mess with that. If you have a 500, get a 500. Now, I had a 500 and I used a 520 rear cover. Everything worked good except for a couple things. This harness right here is different on a 500 to a 520. This is your shift drum sensor. It tells the motor what gear you're in, tells your dash what gear you're in. The connector is different on it. I didn't notice that till mine was all together, so I just cut this connector off, grounded the green wire with the red stripe, and then I did always a neutral mod. So that's something that kind of bit me. Also, this harness over here that passes through here is also different. So try to get one that's the same year of your bike, at least close to the same year, otherwise you might have connector issues. Now I could have swapped my sensor out of my old cover into my new one. I didn't realize that until it was in the machine and I wasn't pulling it back out. So yeah, you need the cover for sure. Okay, you also need the shift shaft. So alright, so the shift shaft is actually under, it's called gear shift fork. So this right here is the ES shaft that you have. What you want is this right here. This is the foot shift shaft. So you need these all these pieces right here. You need this shaft, that's where your foot shifter will actually hook up to. You need the shift shaft, and you need this little piece right here. This rocks side to side, and that's what operates the clutch. So you're going to throw this in the trash. This is your ES one. You'll slide that out of the front of the motor, and then you'll put your foot shift one through the back of the motor and install this onto the front of it. Now the tricky part here is when you go to and do all this little washer right here is going to fall down. So get ready to catch that and hold it in place while you stick your shaft in through the back. It'll all go smoothly. But yeah, that's the tricky part right there is this little washer. But those are the pieces you need. You need 16, 17, and 10. Okay, but there's more. So if we go to front crankcase cover, let me blow this up for you. There's all the parts for the adjuster. You also need 14 and 12 to do this right. There are different part numbers for ES to foot shift. It'll shift better if you get the right ones. You just need 14 and 12 though. Now, of course, if you have a whole motor and you want to use the front cover off a foot shift, you can do that. That's what I did. And then you already get these parts on that cover. The benefit of using the whole front cover is you don't have the hole right here for your ES motor that you have to plug up otherwise. So it made it a little easier for me to throw the front cover on there and not have to worry about plugging up the hole. You could do it with a bolt and some, JV weld or something. It's not a big deal. But yeah, those are the parts you need. So I say the front cover is optional, but you definitely need 14 and 12 from this diagram. And then you definitely need 16, 17, and 10 from this diagram. And then just to go back and reiterate, rear crankcase cover, you need the whole thing. So you need number 1, and then that's about it. You can get if you want to buy a new one, by the way, just buy number 1 and you can swap all your old stuff into it as far as the harnesses and stuff. The bearings are kind of a bear to press in, so if you get a used one, you've already got bearings in it. That's even easier. But yeah, that's the bare minimum stuff you need to make your electric shift a foot shift. And yes, you're going to have flashing check engine lights, and the gear shift position sensor is going to flash and it's going to freak out because you have an ES computer, but who cares? Foot shifts shift when you kick them, not when they feel like it.